Welcome back. Today we're going to explore one of the most important transformative religious movements in American history, the Second Great Awakening. Now, this is a powerful revival that's going to shape not only the spiritual lives of millions, but also have a profound impact on American society as well. It's going to be very influential, especially in the mid-19th century. Now, from reform movements to social justice causes, the Great Awakening is going to leave a lasting mark on the nation. Now, the Second Great Awakening is largely a Protestant religious revival. It begins in the late 18th century. It gained momentum through the first half of the 19th century. And while it started in New England, it spread rapidly to the frontier, to the western frontier and the South as well. It's also going to influence communities across the country. The movement emphasized personal salvation, emotional spiritual experiences, and the democratization of faith, making religion more accessible to ordinary people. As we see these denominations grow. Now, one of the key features of the Second Great Awakening was the camp meeting, where preachers would travel to rural areas. They would hold outdoor revival services and often attract hundreds of even thousands of people. And these emotional gatherings would last for days and would feature powerful sermons urging attendees to turn away from sin and embrace a personal relationship with God. Some of these first religious revivals are going to take place in Kentucky, if memory serves. Now, let's talk about some of the major figures of the Great Awakening. One of the most influential was Charles Finney. He's often referred to as the father of modern revivalism. Now, Finney was known for his intense preaching style. He was focused on individual conversion and social reform, and he believed that the revival of faith should also inspire believers to take action and improve society as well. Now, Finney's influence went beyond the pulpit. He became a leading voice in the abolitionist movement. He supported other social causes like women's rights and temperance. His revival meetings in New York and throughout the northern states would have a profound impact on both religion and politics. In fact, the area between the Erie Canal, along the Erie Canal, would be called the burned over district because things were just so hot. Religious fire was burning so much. People were talking about it. People were being influenced by it. They were going to these camp meetings. They were hearing the preaching done, and they were applying what they were hearing. Now, another important aspect of the Second Great Awakening is the role of women. Women are going to play key roles in spreading religious revival through missionary societies, prayer groups, and social reform movements as well. Women are going to be very influential here. And in fact, many of the moral reform movements that followed, such as temperance and abolitionist movements, were heavily supported by women and led by women, and that was inspired by the religious fervor at the time. Now, one of the most important legacies of the Great Awakening is going to be the democratization of religion. Unlike the more formal and hierarchical church structures that had dominated the past, that from the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, the Episcopal Church. This movement's going to encourage a more personal and direct relationship with God. It brought religious enthusiasm to people who were not previously involved in organized religion. And so the new churches, or at least the more rapidly growing denominations, like the Methodists and the Baptists, they're going to be the fastest growing, especially in the South and the West. And they emphasized a born-again experience, a salvation experience, a very personal one that reached out to ordinary people, particularly those on the frontier and in isolated rural areas. It emphasized an individual faith and salvation as well, and it resonates deeply with Americans living in a rapidly changing society. Remember what's happening. We're moving west. We're industrializing cities. Cities are growing, and so on and so forth. Now, the religious revival of the Second Great Awakening wasn't just about spiritual renewal. It sparks a wave of social reform movements that were aimed at society, trying to improve society. And one of the most important causes was the abolition of slavery. Many revivalists, including Finney, believed that slavery was a sin, that Christians had a moral duty to fight for its end. And of course, when you look at, he also said the same thing about temperance and other things, alcoholism and other things. Abolitionist leaders like William Lloyd Garrison and Frederick Douglass are going to be heavily influenced by the religious fervor of the Second Great Awakening. And the belief in the equality of all souls before God provided a strong moral foundation for the fight against slavery. I am my brother's keeper. Look out for those less fortunate than yourselves. We're all equal in the eyes of God, in other words. Now, another major reform movement, the temperance movement, as I mentioned before, it sought to reduce and eliminate the consumption of alcohol. Many revivalists believed that alcohol led to sin and social problems as well, and they encouraged temperance as a part of a moral and godly life. So, don't drink. Drink leads to problems. Drink leads to sin. It leads to behaving in ways that you would not. And so, and women are going to be very influential in the temperance movement because they're the ones most affected by drunk husbands. So there is that. So the Second Great Awakening leaves a deep and lasting impact on American society. By the mid-19th century, the religious movement that had just all this energy is going to help to shape and create a more participatory democracy. As ordinary citizens become more involved in social and political causes, and the revival that also paved the way for many of the reform movements that would continue to shape the nation. Now, from the abolition of slavery to women's rights, we're going to see education reforms going on here. We're going to see the reforming of prisons. It's when we go from having prisons to penitentiary. When you're thoughtful of something, you are penitent. And so penitentiary means we're going to try to put into place ways in which to have you think about your crime so you don't commit the crime again, reduce recidivism, and that sort of a thing. At least that's that goal. That's the attempt. Is it perfect? No. Now, perhaps most importantly, the Second Great Awakening, though, is going to expand the notion of who could be a leader in society. Women, African Americans, and others have been marginalized. They start to find a voice in some of these organizations and some of these movements that we see springing up, and also in church and in these religious gatherings. It's going to help define American ideals and freedoms of equality going forward, although we still have a long way to go. So the Second Great Awakening is more than just a religious revival. It's reshaping American society in profound ways. It's going to inspire generations of activists to push for more for changes that they feel like need to go into place, for a more equal nation, perhaps, a more just nation, perhaps. And the legacy can still be felt today, especially as we see individuals with the progressive movement of the 1920s, the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. So those are just a few examples that we could look back to where we see a legacy coming out of the Second Great Awakening movement. So if this was helpful, give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment if you wish, and I will try to read all of those as they come through. But I just hope this has helped you become inspired to look a little deeper into the topic and maybe get a little bit more information as you prepare for exams, regardless of where you are. Or maybe you're just a historical person. You got some interest there. You want to know more about it, and you're curious. So hopefully this has been helpful. I'll see you down the road. See you on the next video. Bye-bye.